Her name is Wanda, and she just watched the love of her life marry a complete stranger. But here's the thing that's going to blow your mind. He'd spent 7 entire years telling her he wasn't ready for marriage. 7 years. Then 6 months after they broke up, he proposed to someone he'd known for just half a year. I'm Emma, and today I'm sharing Wanda's story. A story about love, betrayal, and the moment she realized the man she'd shaped into husband material was never going to be hers. If you've ever felt invisible in a relationship, if you've ever wondered whether your love was enough, this story is going to hit you differently. So stick around, because by the end of this, you might see your own relationship in an entirely new way. Let me take you back to where it all started. Wanda was only 19 years old when she met Victor at a house party in Dallas. He was 22, quiet, thoughtful, the kind of guy who worked in technology but never really talked about it. Honestly, Wanda never bothered asking the details. Technical stuff bored her. She was too busy climbing the ladder in customer service, actually dealing with real people instead of hiding behind a computer screen like Victor did. But when they met that night, something just clicked. There was an instant connection, the kind that makes you think, okay, maybe this is it. They started dating, and those first couple of years were absolutely incredible. The honeymoon phase lasted longer than most people's entire relationships. They were happy. They were in love. And after about 18 months of dating, they decided to take the next natural step. They moved in together. They found a decent apartment in a neighborhood that was just starting to get trendy. Nothing fancy, nothing that would impress anyone on Instagram, but it had good bones and potential. It was theirs, and that felt like everything at the time. They were building something together. Or at least, that's what Wanda thought. Here's where things started to shift, and where you really start to see the cracks forming. They split the bills mostly evenly, but Wanda always thought Victor should cover more since he made better money. In her mind, that's just how real relationships work. When you're building a life with someone, the man steps up and takes care of his woman. That's the natural order of things, right? But Victor? He was weird about money from day one. He kept receipts for everything. He wanted to split grocery bills down to the penny. He acted like they were college roommates dividing up rent instead of 2 people planning a future together. Wanda would suggest upgrading their apartment, talk about taking nicer vacations, dream about the life they could build together. And what would Victor do? He'd pull out spreadsheets. He'd talk about savings goals. He'd act like he was afraid to actually invest in what they were creating. It was frustrating, but Wanda told herself it was just a phase. People are different with money. She could work with this. Now, here's something important that Wanda wants you to understand about Victor. When they first got together, he needed a lot of work. He was this awkward guy who had no idea how to dress. He barely knew how to cook. His social skills were basically non-existent. When he was around Wanda's friends, he'd just stand there, unsure of what to say or how to act. But Wanda? She saw potential in him. And more than that, she saw an opportunity. She spent years teaching him how to be a real boyfriend. She helped him pick out better clothes that actually made him look attractive instead of like he'd just grabbed whatever was clean off the bedroom floor. She taught him how to have conversations at parties, how to be charming, how to read social situations. She showed him what women actually wanted from a relationship. She made him into the kind of man who could handle a serious commitment. Before Wanda came along, Victor had never even lived with a girlfriend. He had no idea how to compromise, how to communicate properly, how to be thoughtful and romantic. Wanda basically gave him a complete relationship boot camp. She took this clueless tech guy and turned him into someone who actually knew how to treat a woman right. She was molding him, building him up, creating the perfect partner. And somewhere along the way, she forgot to ask herself an important question. What if he didn't want to be molded? By year 3, things started to feel different. Not bad, necessarily, but different. Wanda's friend Celeste got engaged after dating her boyfriend for just 2.5 years. Her coworker came into work with this gorgeous ring, a beautiful diamond that everyone gathered around to admire. Even her younger cousin was dropping hints about her boyfriend's proposal plans. She was practically planning her future wedding at that point. And then there was Wanda, going on year 4 with Victor, still playing house like they were kids, still waiting. The questions started coming in, and they were absolutely humiliating. When are you two getting married? Has he proposed yet? What are you waiting for? She'd have to smile and make excuses. Oh, we're taking our time. We want to be financially responsible. We're just enjoying where we are right now. But inside she was dying. It's embarrassing being the girl who's been in a relationship forever but has nothing to show for it. No engagement ring, no wedding plans, no proof to the world that your relationship was heading somewhere real. Victor always had excuses ready. First, it was finishing his certification program. Then it was getting promoted at work. Then it was about saving for a bigger emergency fund. There was always something more important than their future together, something more pressing than making things official. Wanda tried to discuss it like adults. She really did. But every time she brought it up, Victor would get uncomfortable. He'd change the subject or make jokes about marriage being just a piece of paper anyway. Marriage is just a piece of paper, he'd say, like that was supposed to comfort her somehow. By year 5, Wanda was genuinely frustrated. And by year 6, she was angry. She had invested half a decade in this man. More than half a decade. She'd been there for him through job changes. She'd supported him through family drama. She was there when he was stressed about work. She held his hand when he was dealing with his parents' divorce. She was basically his wife in every way that mattered, except legally. But apparently that meant nothing to him. She tried being more direct. She sat Victor down and told him clearly, "I'm ready to take the next step. I want to start planning our official future together. I'm not getting any younger, and I want to be married before we start having kids. This is basic relationship progression that most people understand without needing a handbook." But Victor got defensive. He'd talk about wanting to be more established. He needed to feel more financially secure before making that kind of commitment. More established. The man had a decent job. He had a reliable car. He could afford the apartment they shared. What more did he need? A CEO position? $1 million in the bank? It was absolutely ridiculous. The worst part was how he reacted when other people brought up their future. His mom would make comments about wanting grandkids, and he'd tense up immediately, changing the subject like she just asked him to do something impossible. His friends would joke about when he was going to put a ring on it, and he'd look like he wanted to crawl under a rock. Like the idea of marrying Wanda was some kind of burden instead of something to celebrate. Meanwhile, Wanda was watching every other woman in her life get their moment. The proposal, the ring, the excitement, the wedding planning. She had Pinterest boards full of ideas that she'd been updating for 3 years. She knew exactly what kind of dress would look beautiful on her. She had visions of flowers, venues, the whole fairy tale. But none of it mattered because her boyfriend was apparently allergic to commitment. Here's what Wanda wants people to understand. She was patient. She was understanding. She never pressured him or gave ultimatums or made his life miserable. She supported his career. She was there for his family events. She made their apartment into a home that he could be proud of. She did everything a good girlfriend is supposed to do, and honestly, she did more. Year 6 passed. Then year 7 came around, and Wanda finally realized the truth. Victor was never going to propose on his own. He was perfectly content keeping things exactly as they were forever. He was getting all the benefits of having a live-in girlfriend without any of the responsibility that comes with being a husband. He was having his cake and eating it too, while Wanda got nothing but empty promises. That's when she decided to have a real conversation with him. Not hints, not suggestions, but direct, honest communication about where their relationship was actually heading. She told him, "I love you. I want to spend my life with you, but I need to know that you feel the same way about me. After 7 years, I deserve a timeline. I deserve some indication that you see a future with me." Victor's response was everything she'd feared and worse. He said he did want to marry her, eventually. But he wasn't ready yet. He needed more time to feel financially secure. He wanted to make sure they were really compatible long-term, compatible. After 7 years of living together, after 7 years of sharing everything, he still wasn't sure if they were compatible. It was absolutely insulting. Wanda realized she had 2 choices. She could keep waiting indefinitely, hoping that maybe, possibly, Victor would consider proposing someday when the stars aligned perfectly. Or she could respect herself enough to ask for what she deserved. So she gave him a clear timeline. 6 months to decide if he wanted to marry her or not. Not an ultimatum. She wants to be clear about that. Just honest communication about her needs and expectations. Any normal man who loved his girlfriend would have stepped up at that moment. Any guy who'd been with someone for 7 years would realize what he stood to lose and fight for the relationship. But Victor got quiet and distant, like Wanda was being unreasonable instead of asking for basic commitment from her long-term partner. 3 weeks later, he said something that shattered her. "I think we should take a break to figure out what we both want." A break. After 7 years of building a life together, like they were some casual couple who'd been dating for a few months. Wanda was devastated, but also relieved. Finally, she knew where she stood. She moved back in with her old roommate and waited for Victor to come to his senses. I mean, 7 years doesn't just disappear overnight, right? They had history, shared memories, inside jokes, a whole life together. She kept her phone on loud, expecting him to call. She imagined him saying, "I made a mistake. I want to work this out. I can't live without you." But her phone stayed silent. Weeks passed, then months passed, and Victor acted like their entire relationship had never happened. She heard through mutual friends that he was doing great, that he was focusing on himself, doing great. How could anyone be doing great after throwing away the most important relationship of their life? That's when Wanda started seeing the social media posts. Victor had tagged some girl named Iris in a photo at a trendy restaurant downtown. It was tagged as just a casual dinner, but Wanda could tell from their body language that this wasn't platonic. Her heart literally stopped. It had been less than 4 months since they broke up, and he was already moving on, already dating someone new. Wanda immediately looked up this Iris person on social media. She was 24 years old, brunette. One of those artsy Instagram types who post pictures of coffee cups and sunset selfies. She worked at some boutique gallery downtown, probably making barely above minimum wage, selling overpriced art to pretentious rich people. She was pretty in that basic, filtered way. Nothing extraordinary. The more Wanda scrolled through her profile, the more confused she became. This girl was her complete opposite. Where Wanda was practical and goal-oriented, Iris seemed flighty and unrealistic. Where Wanda had a real career and actual financial sense, Iris was playing around with art like she was still a college student. What could Victor possibly see in someone so immature and impractical? Wanda tried to convince herself it was just a rebound. Victor was probably trying to prove to himself that he could date other people, but he'd realized pretty quickly that the grass wasn't always greener. He'd come back. He had to come back. But as weeks turned into months, their social media presence together became more frequent and more obvious. Hiking trips, concerts, art gallery openings. They were doing all the couple activities that Victor had always been too busy or too tired to do with Wanda. What really got under her skin was how happy Victor looked in these photos. Not just content or fine, but genuinely excited and engaged in a way she hadn't seen in years. It was like being with this Iris girl had unlocked some version of him that Wanda had never gotten to experience, despite spending 7 years trying her absolute best. 6 months after their breakup, Wanda saw the post that shattered her world completely. Victor and Iris at some fancy restaurant, and Iris was wearing a ring. Not just any ring, a gorgeous solitaire diamond that probably cost more than everything in Wanda's closet combined. The caption was sickeningly simple. She said yes, with a bunch of heart emojis. Wanda literally threw her phone across the room. She had what can only be described as a complete breakdown. Victor had proposed to this girl after dating her for 6 months. 6 freaking months. Meanwhile, Wanda had waited 7 years for a proposal that never came. 7 years of patience, 7 years of support, 7 years of making excuses for a man who was apparently capable of commitment. Just not to her. All those excuses about not being ready, not having enough money saved, wanting to wait until he was more established. They were all lies. Victor had been ready to commit and get married. He just hadn't wanted to marry her. The realization was devastating and humiliating in equal measure. The comments on their engagement post made her physically ill. All their mutual friends were congratulating them. People were saying how perfect they were together, how happy Victor looked. His mom commented about officially welcoming Iris to the family. His sister posted about gaining a new sister-in-law. These were people who'd known Wanda for years. People who'd been to her and Victor's apartment for parties. People who'd celebrated their anniversaries together. And now they were acting like Iris was the best thing that had ever happened to Victor. Like Wanda had never even existed. Wanda started obsessing over the timeline. She went through old text messages and social media posts, trying to figure out exactly when Victor had met this girl. The math was suspicious. How do you meet someone, fall in love, and decide to marry them in 6 months unless something else was going on? Had Victor been talking to her while they were still together? Had he been planning his exit strategy while Wanda was planning their future? But even if there hadn't been any overlap, the message was crystal clear. Victor was absolutely capable of excitement. He was capable of romantic gestures. He was capable of genuine commitment. He just hadn't felt that way about her. Wanda had spent 7 years trying to force something that had never been real on his end. She'd invested all her time, all her energy, all her love into a man who was just waiting for someone else to come along. When she tried talking to her friends about how unfair the whole situation was, they all gave her the same dismissive response. You need to move on, Wanda. Victor's moved on, and you should too. Easy for them to say. They hadn't just watched their entire adult life get invalidated by some random girl who'd known their ex-boyfriend for 5 minutes. The engagement photos started flooding social media within days. Professional shots of Victor and Iris that looked like they'd stepped out of a fairy tale. Victor was smiling in a way Wanda had never seen before. He was completely relaxed, genuinely ecstatic. Iris looked radiant and confident, like a woman who'd never had to wonder if her boyfriend was going to commit to her. Wanda heard through various people that they were planning a spring wedding, less than a year from engagement to marriage. Victor, who'd spent 7 years telling her he needed more time to be ready for marriage, was apparently ready to marry Iris immediately. The hypocrisy was staggering. The wedding planning posts started appearing almost immediately. Venue tours, dress shopping, cake tastings, flower arrangements. Iris was documenting every single detail like she was some kind of celebrity bride. And Victor was right there with her, looking involved and excited about every single decision. Wanda found herself checking their social media obsessively. She was torturing herself with updates about their perfect relationship. They looked like they were living the exact life she'd always imagined Victor and I would have someday. The engaged couple who couldn't wait to get married, who were thrilled about planning their future together. They'd been together less than a year, but they were already talking about buying a house, getting a dog, starting a family. Victor had always been so cautious about major decisions when he was with Wanda, but apparently Iris had convinced him to throw all that caution out the window. Then Wanda heard about the guest list. Victor was inviting people who'd been part of their social circle for years, people who'd celebrated multiple anniversaries with them, people who knew their entire relationship history. They were all going to watch him marry Iris like it was the most natural thing in the world. His college roommate who'd hung out at their apartment countless times, his work colleagues who'd met her at company parties, his cousins who'd always treated her like family, even some of their couple friends, people who'd done double dates with them for years. They were all choosing Victor and Iris over any loyalty they might have felt toward her. Obviously, Wanda wasn't invited. Not that she would have gone, but the exclusion still stung. It felt like a knife twisting deeper and deeper with each passing day. 7 years of being part of Victor's life, and she was being completely erased from this major milestone. It was like their entire relationship had been reduced to an embarrassing footnote in his love story with Iris. 3 months before the wedding, Wanda made a decision that she still doesn't regret. She was going to go to their ceremony. Not to cause drama or make some pathetic scene, but to see for herself what Victor had chosen over what they'd built together. She needed to understand what made Iris so special that Victor could commit to her in months when he couldn't commit to Wanda in years. The wedding was at this garden venue outside Dallas. And here's the cosmic joke that wasn't lost on Wanda. It was the same place that she and Victor had toured years earlier during one of their "someday when we get married" conversations. She arrived early and positioned herself toward the back of the crowd behind some trees where she could observe everything without being noticed. The setup was absolutely beautiful. White chairs arranged in perfect rows, flowers everywhere, a string quartet playing romantic music. It was everything she'd always envisioned for her own wedding someday. Guests started arriving around 1:30. She recognized most of them. Victor's family, his work friends, college buddies, neighbors from their old building. People who'd known them as a couple were now here to celebrate his marriage to someone else, and they all looked genuinely happy and excited. Then Victor appeared at the altar with his groomsmen. He looked incredible, confident, relaxed, absolutely glowing with happiness. This wasn't the nervous, commitment-phobic man she'd spent 7 years with. This was someone who genuinely couldn't wait to get married. The music changed and everyone stood up. Iris appeared at the back of the aisle, and Wanda has to admit, she looked absolutely stunning. Her dress was this flowing bohemian-style gown that somehow managed to look both elegant and artistic. Her hair was in loose waves with small flowers woven through. She had this radiant smile that lit up her entire face. But what really destroyed Wanda was the way Victor looked at Iris as she walked down the aisle. His face completely transformed when he saw her, like he was witnessing something miraculous. He actually started crying happy tears, and Wanda could see him mouth, "You're beautiful," to her. In 7 years together, Victor had never looked at Wanda like that. Not once. Not on their anniversaries. Not when she dressed up for special occasions. Not even during their best moments together. Their ceremony was personal and heartfelt in a way that made Wanda's chest physically ache. They'd written their own vows, and listening to Victor speak about Iris was like hearing about a completely different person than the man she'd known. He talked about how she'd shown him what real love felt like, how she'd made him believe in forever, how he couldn't imagine his life without her. He said she'd changed him in ways he didn't even know were possible, that she'd brought out the best version of himself. Iris's vows were equally devastating to hear. She talked about how Victor had been worth waiting for, how he'd restored her faith in true love, how grateful she was to have found her person. She mentioned how he'd supported her art career, encouraged her dreams, and made her feel like the most important person in the world. Standing there listening to them pour their hearts out to each other, Wanda felt something she hadn't expected. It wasn't just sadness or anger anymore. It was a deep, crushing realization. Victor had never felt about her the way he clearly felt about Iris. The love he was describing, the connection they shared, it was something she'd never experienced with him despite 7 years of trying. When they kissed after being pronounced husband and wife, the entire crowd erupted in cheers and applause. Victor lifted Iris off her feet and spun her around. Both of them were laughing and crying at the same time. They looked like they were in their own private universe, completely oblivious to everyone else around them. As they walked back down the aisle together as husband and wife, Victor's eyes swept over the crowd, and for a split second, they landed directly on Wanda. Recognition flashed across his face, then surprise, then something that looked uncomfortably like pity. He didn't stop walking or acknowledge her in any way, but Wanda could tell he'd definitely seen her. The moment felt like it lasted forever, but it was probably only a few seconds. Wanda left immediately after the ceremony ended before anyone else could spot her lurking in the back. She didn't want to deal with awkward conversations or have to explain why she was there. She'd seen what she came to see, and it was somehow both better and worse than she'd imagined. Driving home, she kept replaying Victor's vows in her head, the way he'd talked about Iris, the way he'd looked at her, the genuine emotion in his voice. It was everything she'd wanted him to feel about her but never had. She'd spent 7 years trying to force a connection that had apparently never really existed. While Iris had effortlessly inspired the kind of love that Wanda had only dreamed about, the truth was devastating, but it was undeniable. Victor hadn't been incapable of commitment. He'd been incapable of committing to her. When the right woman came along, all his excuses about not being ready, needing more time, wanting to be financially stable, they'd all magically disappeared. Wanda spent the rest of that day having what can only be described as an emotional breakdown, not just crying about the relationship she'd lost, but grieving the 7 years she'd wasted trying to be someone's reluctant choice. She'd thought she was being patient and understanding, but really she'd been settling for someone who was settling for her. The wedding photos started appearing on social media that evening, and they were everything she'd expected and worse. Victor and Iris looked radiantly happy in every single shot, surrounded by friends and family who clearly adored them both. The comments were full of people saying they'd never seen two people more in love, that it was obvious they were meant to be together, that their connection was magical. Wanda found herself scrolling through every single photo, torturing herself with their happiness. In every picture, they looked like they belonged together in a way that she and Victor never had. Even their best photos from 7 years together looked awkward and forced compared to Iris and Victor's natural chemistry and obvious joy. That's when the real anger set in. Not just sadness anymore, but genuine fury at how completely unfair the entire situation was. Wanda had given Victor the best years of her life. She'd supported him through career changes and family problems. She was there for him when literally no one else was. She'd shaped him into the kind of man who could handle a serious relationship. And her reward was watching him give his whole heart to someone else within months of meeting her. But here's what nobody wants to acknowledge. What makes Wanda absolutely livid? Their perfect love story came directly at her expense. Victor used her as his practice girlfriend, his training wheels while he figured out how to be in a relationship. She taught him about compromise, about communication, how to live with someone, how to handle conflict. Then he took all those skills she'd helped him develop and handed them over to Iris like a gift. Everyone wants to act like Victor and Iris are some epic romance, but they're not. They're a man who was too cowardly to commit to the woman who'd invested years in him, and a woman who was smart enough to demand commitment from day one. There's nothing romantic about that equation. Wanda started hearing updates about their married life through mutual friends. Every piece of information felt like another slap in the face. They'd bought a house in a neighborhood she always loved. They'd gotten a golden retriever puppy. Victor had gotten another promotion at work, so money was no longer an issue. They were talking about starting a family within the next couple of years. Everything she'd waited for, everything she'd been patient about was being handed to Iris, like she'd somehow earned it more than Wanda had. The thing that really pisses Wanda off is how everyone expects her to be happy for them, like she's supposed to celebrate the fact that her ex-boyfriend found true love with someone else after wasting 7 years of her life. Sorry, but she's not that evolved. She's not going to pretend that watching the love of her life marry someone else was some kind of blessing in disguise. Before anyone tries to tell her she should have seen the signs, let her be crystal clear. There were no signs. Victor told her he loved her regularly. He talked about their future together. He made plans with her. He introduced her to his family and friends as his girlfriend. If he wasn't serious about their relationship, he should have been honest instead of stringing her along for the better part of a decade. The worst part is that everyone else has moved on except her. Victor and Iris are living their perfect married life, posting anniversary photos and couple selfies. Their mutual friends have fully accepted them as the new power couple. Even Victor's family acts like Iris has always been part of their lives. Meanwhile, Wanda is still trying to figure out how 7 years of her life just got erased like they never happened. People keep telling her she needs to forgive and forget. That holding on to resentment isn't healthy. But you know what else isn't healthy? Pretending that what happened to her was acceptable. Pretending that Victor didn't waste the most important years of her 20s. Pretending that Iris didn't directly benefit from all the emotional labor she put into making Victor into husband material. Wanda is not the villain in this story, no matter how everyone wants to paint her. She's the woman who loved someone completely and got absolutely nothing in return except wasted time and heartbreak. She's the woman who waited patiently while her boyfriend figured things out, only to watch him marry someone else 6 months after meeting her. Victor and Iris can have their perfect marriage and their perfect Instagram-worthy life. They can buy their dream house and have their beautiful babies and pretend like their relationship exists in a vacuum. But they can't rewrite history. They can't pretend that their happiness didn't come at someone else's expense. Wanda was there first. She loved him first. And she deserved so much better than what she got. Maybe someday Victor will realize what he gave up. Maybe the honeymoon phase will wear off and he'll remember what it was like to be with someone who actually knew him, flaws and all. Maybe someday Iris will show her true colors. Because trust me, nobody's that perfect. Or maybe they'll live happily ever after, while Wanda's stuck being the bitter ex-girlfriend who couldn't let go. Either way, Wanda knows the truth about what happened, and that's going to have to be enough for now. Because at the end of the day, she's not the one who threw away 7 years of genuine love for someone she'd known for 6 months. She's not the one who made promises she had no intention of keeping. She's not the one who chose the easy path over the meaningful one. That was all Victor. And eventually, karma is going to catch up with him. It has to. Thank you so much for listening to Wanda's story with me, here on Mrs. Emma. This story reminds us that sometimes the people we love the most can hurt us in ways we never expected. It's a painful reminder that we can't force someone to see our value, no matter how hard we try or how much we change ourselves for them. If Wanda's story resonated with you, if you've ever felt invisible in a relationship or wondered whether your love was enough, I want you to know that you're not alone. Your feelings are valid, your pain is real, and you deserve better. So here's what I'm asking you to do. Please like this video. Your support means everything to me and helps these stories reach more people who need to hear them. Share this video with your friends, especially that friend who might be in a similar situation right now. They need to hear Wanda's truth. And most importantly, please subscribe to the Mrs. Emma channel so you never miss another story like this one. Every week, I bring you real stories about real people facing real problems. Stories that might change the way you see your own life. Subscribe now to stay updated and never miss these powerful stories. Thank you for being here. Thank you for caring. And remember, you deserve someone who chooses you, not someone who settles for you. This is Mrs. Emma reminding you that your story matters.